In 1940, a 12-year-old boy steps off a boat in Hong Kong with nothing. No money, no school, a father who is dying. 3 years later, Lee's father is dead, and Lee is the one who has to feed the whole family. Lee is 15 years old, working 16 hours a day in a plastics factory, coughing up blood. 60 years later, that same boy controls a $20 billion empire, ports, power, phones, and property on 5 continents. They call Lee Superman. This is the story of how a penniless refugee outplayed the richest bank in Asia. Let's get into it.
But before we meet Lee, let me introduce you to someone, because in this channel, Lee is this cat.
It is 1940. Lee Ka-shing is 12 years old. Lee's family has just fled the war in mainland China. They arrive in Hong Kong as refugees with almost nothing. Lee's father was a school principal back home, a respected man. Here, he is just another poor immigrant. The family is crammed into one tiny room. Lee watches his father work himself to exhaustion trying to keep them alive. Then Lee's father starts coughing. It is tuberculosis. Lee sits beside the bed. Lee watches the strongest person Lee knows get weaker every single day. In 1943, Lee's father dies. Lee is 15 years old. And in that moment, everything changes. Lee is now the man of the family. Lee's mother and younger siblings are looking at Lee to survive. So, Lee does the only thing Lee can do. Lee drops out of school and goes to work.
Hold up, 15 years old, and he's already taking care of the whole family?
15, bruh, most of us were playing games at 15. This man was the paycheck.
Lee gets a job in a plastics trading company. Lee sells watch bands and belts door to door. Lee works 16 hours a day. Lee wakes before the sun and walks the streets until midnight. Lee is good at it. Lee reads people. Lee listens. Within a couple of years, the kid is the top salesman in the company. But the hours are crushing Lee. The same disease that killed Lee's father, tuberculosis, now finds Lee. Lee is coughing up blood, and Lee cannot stop working because if Lee stops, the family does not eat. So, Lee works through it. Lee teaches himself at night from secondhand textbooks because Lee cannot afford new ones. By 1950, Lee has saved a little money. A few $1,000s. Lee borrows the rest from relatives, and Lee makes the first real bet of Lee's life. Lee opens a tiny factory of Lee's own. Lee names it Chung Kong after the longest river in China. A huge name for a one-room workshop.
Ayo, real quick, here is why a name like that matters. Chung Kong is the Yangtze, the biggest river in China. A river that big does not come from one spring. It only gets huge because thousands of tiny streams flow into it. Lee picked that name on purpose, bruh. He was telling everyone, I am going to grow by taking in everything around me. Tiny factory, giant dream.
Lee is 22 years old. Lee has a factory, a mountain of debt, and a family depending on every cent. The door behind Lee just closed. There's no going back to a safe paycheck now. And in about 90 seconds, you are going to watch Lee take one cheap plastic flower and turn it into the foundation of a billion-dollar fortune by spotting something everyone else in Hong Kong completely missed. At first, Chung Kong makes cheap plastic toys and household goods. It survives, barely. Then, on a trip abroad, Lee sees something in an Italian magazine. Plastic flowers. Flowers that never wilt, cheap to make, and in 1950s Hong Kong, almost nobody is making them. Lee sees the gap instantly. Lee retools the entire factory around plastic flowers. And the orders explode. America wants them. Europe wants them. Chung Kong cannot make them fast enough. By the late 1950s, Lee is the biggest exporter of plastic flowers in all of Asia. The press starts calling Lee the Flower King. For the first time, the boy who buried his father has real money. But Lee does not spend it. Lee watches. Lee waits.
Plastic flowers? That's the empire? Come on now.
Do not laugh, bruh. Those fake flowers paid for everything that came next.
Then comes 1967. Hong Kong erupts in riots. The city is terrified. Everyone thinks the colony is finished. Rich families panic. They dump their property and their land for almost nothing, and they run. Lee does the exact opposite. While everyone is selling in fear, Lee is buying. Lee takes the cash from the plastic flowers and pours it into land nobody else wants. Buildings, lots, whole sites at fire sale prices. Lee is making a bet that Hong Kong will not die, that the fear is temporary, that the land will come back. And Hong Kong does come back. The panic ends. Property prices climb and climb and climb. In 1972, Lee takes his property company public. Chung Kong Holdings lists on the Hong Kong Stock Exchange. The boy who could not afford textbooks is now one of the biggest landlords in the city. But here is what the money never fixes. On the outside, Lee now has buildings, a public company, his name in the newspapers. On the inside, Lee is still the 15-year-old sitting next to a dead father, terrified the family will starve. People who worked with Lee describe a man who never relaxes, who keeps an old, cheap watch, who lives like the money could vanish tomorrow. Because Lee knows something most rich people never learn the hard way. Lee has already lost everything once. Lee watched tuberculosis take his father. Then Lee felt it come for him in that factory, coughing blood at 17, still walking the streets to sell. That fear never leaves Lee. Not when Lee is poor. Not when Lee is rich.
Man, that's heavy. He's a millionaire and he's still scared he's gonna lose it all?
When you grow up that hungry, bruh, the fear never really leaves. It just buys a nicer house.
But Lee does something with that fear that most people cannot. Lee turns it into a rule. Lee refuses to drown in debt the way others do. Lee keeps cash. Lee keeps control. Lee raises money before Lee builds. Lee pre-sells apartments. Lee never lets himself be cornered the way his family was cornered. The terror of being 15 and helpless becomes the discipline that makes Lee impossible to break. And in 90 seconds, you are going to watch that discipline pay off in the single biggest move of Lee's life, the night a penniless refugee walks into the most powerful British bank in Asia and walks out owning one of its crown jewels. The deal that turns Lee from rich man into legend. It is September 25th, 1979. Late at night, after the London market closes, the most powerful bank in Hong Kong, HSBC, makes an announcement. HSBC is selling its 22% controlling stake in Hutchison Whampoa, one of the great old British trading houses, ports, docks, retail. And the buyer is not another British firm. The buyer is Lee, the refugee, the Flower King. The price is around 639 million Hong Kong dollars, roughly 80 million US dollars, for a company worth far, far more. Lee buys it for less than half its book value. Lee becomes the first Chinese businessman ever to take control of one of the giant British trading houses. The colonial order just cracked, and a refugee did it.
Wait! The biggest British bank handed half a giant company to the plastic flower guy for less than half what it was worth?
They did, bruh, because Lee spent 20 years being the guy who always pays, always delivers, never blows up. They trusted him.
So the boring discipline was the whole move the entire time?
That's the lesson right there, man. Boring is how you get the keys to the kingdom.
From a dying boat to half a trading empire. That's wild.
From there, Lee does not slow down. Lee turns Hutchison into one of the largest port operators on Earth. Lee buys into power, into telecoms, into oil in Canada. In 1999, Lee sells a single mobile business, Orange, for around $15 billion. At Lee's peak, Lee's fortune climbs above $20 billion, and for years Lee is the richest man in Asia. Hong Kong gives Lee a nickname that sticks for life: Superman.
Ayo, here is the money lesson, plain and simple. Everybody remembers the big Hutchison deal, but Lee only got that deal because of how he played the boring years. He kept cash. He avoided crazy debt. He bought when everybody else was panic selling, and he sold when everybody else was greedy. That is the whole game, bruh. Be patient when others panic. Be careful when others get greedy. That is how you are still standing when the one big chance finally shows up.